this podcast of Politics of Geo-Economics, where we look at the recent updates on global geo-economics landscape. How are you all doing?
How are you, folks? Welcome to this episode of Bird Eye View. And we can see from the above that geo-economics, that is, the risks of the fragility that lies in economic interdependence.
And in terms of business activity, what are the most relevant geopolitical risks to the businesses?
Well, according to research surveys, they are domestic politics of overseas business locations, international politics, non-tariff barriers, tariff barriers, financial sanctions, etc. Geo-economics is often used in the sense of using the economy for geopolitical aims, with more emphasis on policy implementation than analysis of the current situation. Economic sanctions against Russia are a case in point. So, the policy has to be implemented.
Right, in simple terms, the politics of it, rather the factual risk. And I say that defining geo-economics is not easy. Part of the problem is the crowded field of contending authorities. Scholars joining the effort from backgrounds in critical geography and critical geopolitics are not alone. The foreign policy elites, international relations specialists, and financial commentators all have their own stakes in what the term means. And different geopolitical actors in the world at large have their own evolving takes, too.
Sometimes the ends and means are also reversed. The result is that geo-economics is also understood as the reciprocal application of security arguments and military actions with economic goals. Historically, this has involved using military power to open markets and integrate economies. But increasingly in the US, it now involves carefully crafted words for geopolitical protection, like de-risking and friend-shoring, to advance protectionist economic policy.
Isn't this what politics entails? I wonder what has changed in looking at geo-economics.
Economic concerns over foreign competition are thereby reframed as security concerns, such as in the Biden administration's rhetoric about Chinese electric vehicle (EV) competition, posing risks to our national security. The fact that such isolationist or anti-integrationist ends means goodbye to rationality.
It is what it is. Why don't they just call it our fear of losing economic slice of a pie?
And some of it just true. The growing power won't feel it as compared to the shrinking economy. No longer geo-economics is simply associated with Western free market interests.
With that, we're going to look at the news that contextualize the politics of geo-economics.
By the end of the decade, the IMF forecasts global public debt will reach 100% of world GDP. The US and China account for a significant share of rising public debt levels. So the more these powers produce, the more they borrow eventually gets borrowed by the public.
And IMF warns on China's property market worsening as it cuts country's growth outlook. China's property sector contracting by more than expected is one of many downside risks for the global economic outlook.
And in US bond market treasury yields begin to slip. The yield on benchmark US 10-year notes fell 1.4 basis points to 4.418%. as markets reassess future rate cuts from the Federal Reserve, given expectations that 2025 could be inflationary.
And to the UN Climate Change Summit, developing nations slammed the deal reached at the United Nations climate talks, COP29, today, which pledged at least $300 billion a year to help them cope with the ravages of global warming.
Though 3 times the $100 billion a year agreed in a deal due to expire from 2009, it is nowhere near the $1.3 trillion that developing countries were asking for.
Well, speaking of the reach of protectionism, COP29 funds typically from grants and low-interest loans from the developed world. The rest will have to come from private investors.
and emerging markets funds suffer outflows as hopes of rate cuts by developing nations fade. In other words, junk bonds at risk as emerging markets brace for Trumponomics.
The US dollar has been rising and likely will remain strong in the medium term, thanks to a relatively healthier US economy and the expectation that the US will normalize its monetary policy before the Eurozone and Japan.
In a strong US dollar environment, investors considering emerging markets bonds to diversify their portfolios may want to focus on funds that invest in US dollar-denominated sovereign debt. While a strong US dollar makes it more expensive for emerging market sovereigns to repay their dollar-denominated debt, therefore the suffering of the funds.
And on the other pole, China opens up megaport in Latin America to Chinese trade as US looks on. Trump won the US presidential election on a platform that promised tariffs as high as 60% on Chinese-made goods. Further south, though, a new China-backed megaport has the potential to create whole new trade routes that will bypass North America entirely.
So is it a defensive measure or preparation from China to withstand tariffs' brunt?
Both! And China's huge gold discovery in Hunan has sparked a surge in gold prices, nearing record highs amid geopolitical tensions and growing demand.
This significant gold discovery in China has further boosted global gold prices. However, geopolitical tensions and central banks' moves on interest rates also affected gold prices. On November 18th, 2024, China's aviation authorities announced plans to launch eVTOL electric vertical takeoff and landing pilot projects in 6 cities. With the low-altitude economy officially incorporated into the government's work report, 2024 is hailed as the year of low-altitude economy by industry experts.
What is eVTOL exactly?
eVTOL stands for Electric Vertical Takeoff and Landing, and it refers to a type of aircraft that uses electric motors to take off, land, and hover vertically. eVTOLs use electric motors to power propellers or rotors that enable them to take off and land vertically, hover, and fly horizontally.
So from a bird-eye view, where do you think the geo-economic situation of the world is heading towards?
I think it's heading on direction towards produce more and improve supply chain delivery, and on the other direction, it's protect more and conserve more.
And then we can code our geopolitical and geo-economics games on top of it. Well, historians would be able to write at some point in time who dominated over whom. That's all, folks, we have for you this time around. Thanks for watching.
If you liked, then please subscribe. See you in the next one. Bye.
See you later. Goodbye.